All right. First off, before we begin, is the board on?
The board is not joining us today, unfortunately.
Well, I was curious before we talk about Severance, of just like for you, how did you get into acting and when did you decide that this is the career for you?
That's a great question. I love that question. I don't remember really deciding. The story goes that I was like 4 years old playing with my toys, and there was a Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers film playing in the background, and I like went up to the screen, like dropped my toys and like sat there in silence and then said, this is what I want to do. So I think I've always known that I wanted to perform. I don't really remember a time that I didn't. And so I just joined anything I could, dance class, which I wasn't great at, although I do still sometimes take it for fun. Choir, show choir, school plays, just got really involved in any extracurricular activities that I could. And then when I was 13 years old, I moved to New York City. Well, first Roosevelt Island, which at the time wasn't Manhattan, it was Queens, which is a funny little tidbit. And I ended up going to this little performing arts school called PPAS. And it was okay. The teachers were wonderful, but it just didn't feel like the right fit for me. It was such a small school. I think there was something like 32 people per grade, and it was just, there's so much drama. It was crazy. So I decided to audition for other schools. And in New York City, when you audition for these public schools that have all of these wonderful programs, it's like a mini college process. So you're auditioning, you're writing letters, you're going into interviews. So I ended up getting into LaGuardia, and I wanted to be in the vocal program. At first, I thought I wanted to be a singer, but I sang Bill Withers' Ain't No Sunshine for the opera program, so that didn't work out for me so well. And I got into the drama program. So I was deciding, like, do I stay at PPAS and do vocal, or do I go to the school I really want to go to? And so I decided to go to LaGuardia, also because there was something about acting that seemed very different. It was harder for me. It didn't come quite as naturally. And I thought there was more opportunity for creative growth. So I went ahead and did that. So it was like a regular school, but then we had 4 hours of drama after our academics every day. And then when you get older, like senior year, you're doing plays and rehearsals till 10 p.m. at night. So I went ahead and did that. Then I auditioned for conservatories and landed on SUNY Purchase. So I got my BFA at SUNY Purchase. I went really the traditional route, so classically trained theater. And then after school, I just started auditioning and just working side jobs, auditioning, working side jobs, auditioning. And that's it.
To go back for a second, Ain't No Sunshine, I feel like is a great audition song because it's beautiful, but also if you don't get it, it's like the perfect mood for not getting something.
You're so right. It's true.
Well, okay, so I'm curious, like being in New York, was the idea, did you envision, obviously, this like Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers thing, like, was it musical theater is what you pictured doing, or like in stage, or where did TV come into it?
Strangely enough, not musical theater. You would think so, right? Because the two go perfectly together. But I remember watching musicals and I liked them and respected them. But there was something about just straight plays that really did it for me. I think one of the first scenes I worked on was Night Mother, which is just so epically dark for a high school student. But I remember just really liking straight plays. And so I had auditioned for a couple of musicals after school, but I'm very much an alto. I can go kind of mezzo soprano, but they would be like, oh, bring your book out. I'm like, my book? I have like 2 songs prepared today. So I told my agent, like, I think that the people who studied musical theater might be better for this because I'm just not prepared. I don't have this big, thick book that I worked on. We didn't have singing lessons at SUNY Purchase. So, I as far as film and TV, I always loved watching TV as a kid. I would watch TV for hours and hours. So I always knew that I wanted to do screen, but I also love being on the stage. So in an ideal world, I'm working in film and TV enough to be able to afford to do theater as well.
I like that. Okay, so with Severance, I'm curious, particularly with this show, which is very much like a mysterious show, what the audition process was like and sort of like what they told you going in and how you prepared for it.
So I've been very lucky in that I often get scripts ahead of time. I know some of my friends don't get scripts. Like there have been times where friends and I are taping for the same project and I get the script and they don't get the script.
You get the hookup.
Luckily, I got the script, so I had an idea of what the tone was like, which, I mean, you can have an idea of what the tone is like on Severance from reading it on a page, but it's obviously so unique. So I thought I had an idea of what the tone was, but I really felt like I just kind of understood the world when I read the script. And it was just a classic audition. So I had 2 scenes. I went in, I did my audition. I do remember smiling in the audition. And then a couple weeks later, or maybe it was days later, I don't know. Sometimes I have no sense of time. I heard back that I was going into a director session callback at the studio and that it would be with Ben Stiller. And so at this point now I'm like nervous because I think it's one thing to go in for an audition. And for me, at least at that stage in my life, it was a whole other feeling of pressure to go in and actually meet a director or a producer. But Ben Stiller is Ben Stiller. And I had grown up watching his stuff. And so I was totally intimidated and very excited. So I went up to the studio and I was kind of just waiting for the nerves to come. I used to get so nervous for auditions that it would just be a miracle that I could get through the audition. And for some reason, the nerves didn't really come. And so it felt unfamiliar, but I felt like I was in the right place at the right time for some reason. And I entered, we did the scene. Bess Pfeiffer was there, amazing casting director. And we did a couple of adjustments, tried it a few ways. And I left thinking that I just bombed the audition. I was like, there's no way I got this. I was terrible. And I think because I wasn't nervous and it felt unfamiliar, I wasn't aware that it had actually gone well. Then the city shut down 2 days later.
Oh, no.
And so, yeah, literally 2 days later, I remember they were like carting in towers of hand sanitizer at the studio. You know, unbeknownst to us, it was going to be very different. And so production shut down. And I knew that I was in the mix. And then I knew that I was the top choice, but there was really no confirmation of anything for months and months. So I was just kind of waiting with bated breath for a really long time. And then I found out that I booked it. And then the same day I booked a Crest commercial. And so it was like the best day of my life. Commercial and my first recurring role. And yeah, that was the process.
Weirdly, an overlap of smiling, I feel like, between the two.
And because Ben had seen my Crest commercial, the first day that we shot the board scene, he wanted me to use that same smile. And so they actually ended up being married somehow. So I'm so grateful for that commercial.
Yeah. How much is there a temptation to, I don't know, bring up Zoolander or something like just with Ben? Is there a point that you get comfortable enough to bring up and ask him about that stuff? Or
I've never brought it up, but I have many times wanted to ask him to do Blue Steel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm like, being professional, Sydney, don't ask him to do Blue Steel. He's a funny guy.
As an actor, you just, I don't know. I'm not sure what expression I'm supposed to do. Could you help? Maybe. Well, but I'm curious too, like you said, you got the script and all that, but like, I don't know, like, how did you view the character going in? Like, cause I feel like this could be a difficult character to approach because there's so much under the surface and it's very limited what we see.
I think that just from my life experiences, I'm familiar with that type of person. And so it didn't take much for me to kind of get her. I feel like I've interacted with people like that a lot. I had worked a corporate job where people were speaking to each other in such a manner, and all smiling and positive, but you're in there feeling like you're sweating and you're like, what is happening to me? So I think because of my life experience, I just understood the tone. And the way I approach the character generally, I just tried to really do a lot of research about, for me, the way I saw it was like, okay, it's like a corporate cult. So I researched, I had plenty of time on my hands because, you know, the pandemic had hit and we were inside. So I read and watched as many documentaries as I could about these groups, and tried to just understand like what's happening in this person's mind, and how are they relating to people, and how are they relating to the group, and what does it mean when someone is acting in a way that's not approved. And then I worked with my therapist as well, just on her kind of psychology and how she views threats, and how she can be someone who and I've said this before, but I feel like Natalie is deeply empathetic. She's just not sympathetic, but she is constantly able to click into what people are feeling. Mm-hmm. And so I thought about how she can form this like idealized merge with the company and with Jane Egan, but still not have that toward other people. And so then I made a backstory about her upbringing, and how did she end up in this group? How did she get here? And how does she relate to people? And so I really tried to just find the person inside of her, because I think it could be so easy to just make her into some sort of a clown. But I really wanted to take her seriously.
It is. I think it's interesting. Yeah, the sort of cult plus work culture thing, because there is and I think that's the brilliance of the show. There's a lot of overlap between corporate retreats and that sort of corporate vibe and cults. Like that's a thin line that separates the two that I think is really fun about the show. But so I'm curious too. Obviously, you have a brilliant scene this season, which is the season 2, episode 3 scene with Natalie and Milchick, that she presents him with this artwork that's from the board. And I was just curious if you could tell me your thoughts, like when you read that scene and your sort of approach to that scene in particular, like when you were playing it.
Yeah. So I was spoken to about the scene before I read the scene. And so one of the producers gave me a call and discussed the possibility of the scene being in that episode. And I was pretty excited about it. I thought it was really interesting. And I then got the scene and was just like, whoa. And I remember I thought about it a lot, and I thought like, okay, well, how would I react to this? Just to kind of get that over with. And how would Natalie react to this? And in what ways are we different? And can I put myself on a shelf right now and really just stick with how Natalie would react to this? And while I prepped for the scene, I find it to be also important not to over prep, because I wanted to see what Tramell Tillman was going to bring to the scene as well, and to have enough flexibility to be able to receive what he was going to give me. So I kind of like half prepared it, if that makes sense. Like I had an idea of how my character would respond, but I didn't glue it down necessarily. And so when we got to set, we had Tramell and I spoke about it a little bit, and then Tramell, Ben, and I spoke about it a little bit, and Ben was very kind about just allowing us to express ourselves and to listen to what we thought the scene might look like. And something that Tramell had said, which I thought was really important, was that we don't necessarily want to isolate the audience with this scene, but invite them in to ask questions. And so he and I chatted a little bit. And then when we went through the scene, I tried it a bunch of different ways. And I just tried to look into his eyes, because he has such wonderfully expressive eyes, and he's such a talented, intelligent actor, and just kind of allow myself to feel whatever was going on between us. But I do remember just having this distinct feeling of worry and fear that something was going to be said that couldn't be unsaid. And so I tried to allow it to like start to bubble up in her consciousness that was happening, but without letting it get to a point where something could actually be said. And so it was an interesting line of allowing Natalie to feel something, but not to the extent that she's now breaking character. So I let it kind of bubble up and then pushed it down, but I thought it was such a fun scene to work on, and we tried it so many different ways. I will say that the moment where Natalie smiles and says, like, what is the line? Congratulations, Seth. That's what it was. I knew when we did that take that was the one, because something was like, my face was twitching and I was like, what's happening right now? Which is always, I think, a fun moment for an actor when you like don't plan something and something just happens just because you're acting, I guess. That's the goal, is to be acting. Yeah.
Well, it's funny too that you mentioned both. You mentioned Tremel Tillman's eyes and both like twitching, because I was rewatching it too before I talked to you, and there's a moment where his eye is actually twitching in the screen that I didn't catch the first time, and then I feel like you're doing so much acting with your eyes too, because there's this like what the board can hear you but presumably not see you, so like there's what you're saying versus your eyes are conveying this, different emotion where like it is such a great scene with both of you. And I love the way that it just hangs and just sits, like when the call ends and there's just those little moments between the two of you where you still, like you said, I think, she's feeling the emotions, but you're still not able to say them, is just this really beautiful moment. And it kind of really changed the way that I saw your character too. Like, I feel like I like understood her a little bit more in the moment, because I feel like as well that, I sort of looked at her up until that point of like, there's a power to Natalie's position in that she gets to communicate with the board. She has the access to the board. Like through that access, she kind of has more power than Milchick and more power than Cobell, that like they have to go through Natalie. And it like, so there's a privilege to it. But then what I realized in that scene is that also how terrifying that is, that if you have access to the board, that means that they always have access to you at all time. And so you're never really free either.
I agree with you. And thank you for saying all of that. I appreciate it. I think that no one is safe. And in a lot of ways, I think for Natalie, this corporation is the God, and no one is safe from God's wrath. And so I think that while she's clinging desperately to maintain the golden child in a way, and this proximity to the board, and it can be taken away at any moment, which means that she's so desperate to remain in that position. And I think the stakes are at a constant high for her. And I think that her power is in her good standing with them. And if she doesn't maintain that good standing, if people step out of line and it's not addressed, and often she has to do it with looks, because she's not speaking her own words most of the time. And so she's kind of found her own way to communicate without using her words. But I definitely think that anybody in a position like that, where they are under the influence of being a conduit to a god or something like that, it's very fragile.
That's it. Yeah, a conduit to a god. I never thought about it that way. That like there's almost, it's like she's a prophet, like the God is speaking to her. Yeah, I've never, like, I love that in like view of the character, that like she's Moses or something, that she's going up onto the mountaintop and talking to God and then bringing back the message. But also how terrifying that would be as well.
Yeah, very.
Well, I'm curious, and I think ultimately I probably don't want to really know anything because I love this show and I love watching it every week. But is there anything that you want to say about, Natalie, like this season? Anything to look out for? Any sort of, I don't know, vague teaser?
Vague teaser.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel the same way, where I almost don't want to say anything, because I think something for me that's been so cool and so enjoyable is just to see how the fans are interacting and creating theories and arguing about the theories and making art. And I don't want to debunk anything, because I love seeing that. And I think it adds to just the joy and the excitement. So I don't know. I'm really not sure how to answer that question. I wish I was better at answering your question.
I feel like I have to ask, but I also don't want to ask, because if I didn't, then people would be like, why didn't you ask her what's going to happen? But I'm curious too, since you mentioned that, like on set, are the actors, like it sounds like you're reading the theories online. Do you guys talk about it? Like, do you speculate?
So some actors watch things and read things, and then other actors are like the complete opposite. I think it really depends on the individual, because also something that's hard is, it's online. Some people are nice, some people are not nice,
Yeah, yeah.
But I am excited about it. I think also because it's my first recurring and it's just so fun. And it's an absolute dream to work on such a collaborative show with so many talented people who are just absolutely dedicated to making this the best project that they can, from the set design to the props to the costumes to the script to the actors. Everyone is just so talented and hardworking, the cinematography. So I think I've really like dove deep into reading things just because it's a surreal experience for me. It's so exciting and something I try to really take in, especially in an industry where opportunities like this are far and few between. I try to like really soak in every first and every celebration, because otherwise it's too hard and there's too many, no's. So that's something that I'm doing. But I think we've spoken a little bit about people's theories generally, but there's also a lot of mystery, because I know, for example, so I've been lucky enough to receive all of the scripts. So season 1 and season 2, I read all of the scripts and I knew what was going on, but there are still mysteries that we don't know about. Like there have been times where I've spoken to Dan Erickson, who's the creator, and asked him for clarification about certain things. And then there were certain things that I had asked about that were not answered. So in a way, like I don't know some of the mysteries, and it's also kind of fun to watch them unfold. Like I watched the whole season, and then afterwards I was like, oh, I wish I hadn't watched the whole season. Like I wish I would have waited and stretched it out and just seen it unfold with everyone. So it's been kind of fun to also be able to witness the mystery.
No, it is nice that I feel like that doesn't happen as often these days, unfortunately, that like just the way the people watch television has changed. But it kind of reminds me of like when I used to watch Lost, the way that people get really wrapped up in the theories and that week to week discussion, which is really fun to have that again in a show. I also feel like, I don't know, is this setting a high bar for you for like, this is your first reoccurring? This is such a good show that like, I worry about your second reoccurring job.
I also worry. Oh, it's definitely setting the bar high, especially because I think when like I'm working on a show of this caliber with a cast that's so stellar, like Patricia Arquette is a legend, and they're all so nice, and they're all so humble, and they're all so friendly and hardworking. And I remember one of the first days I had on set when I was working with Patricia, and we finished her coverage and then we move on to my coverage. And she was just as locked in and just as focused when the camera wasn't on her. And she was like, is there anything you need? Like she was so giving. And I think just as a newer actor on set, that meant so much to me and was so touching and just incredible. So I think definitely the bar is high, and I'm not expecting this to be every experience that I have moving forward. But yeah, it's been a dream and a joy. And it's going to be hard to top. That's for sure.
Well, what else is on the horizon for you? Is there anything else coming up that you want to talk about? Or?
Sure. So I actually just saw on Instagram, I did like a couple of days on this film that's now called Psychotherapy with John Garro and Steve Buscemi, and Britt Lauer is in it.
Nice.
She's the lead in it. And so that just got bought. We were at Tribeca, I think over the summer, was it? Oh my God, time. I told you I have no time. 2 summers ago. I did a day on this film called After that will be released. I have another film I worked on that I don't think I can talk about yet. And that's pretty much it for now. Yeah, I mean, I will say it's still been pretty slow. I'm lucky enough to get some auditions, which has been really nice. But I think with the pandemic and then the dual strikes, things are just now starting to pick up.
Yeah. Are you still doing theater stuff as well, or has it been mostly?
I do audition for theater, and I will say, like, theater, I feel like is where I really like shine in my auditions, like for whatever reason, because I have a huge, massive personality. I'm very expressive, and so I really just go crazy on my theater auditions, and it's really fun. And I've gotten really close to a lot of things, but I haven't booked a theater show in a long time. I think it's been something like 4 years. I would love to do a play. I would love to do a farce. I think that would be so much fun.
Nice. Yeah. No, yeah, I want that for you. That sounds great.
Thank you.
Well, is there anything else I haven't mentioned that you want to mention? Or?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, I think we got it then. Like,
All
thank you
right.
so much for talking to me. Like I said, I love the show. Like, you're great on it. Like, it's my favorite thing to watch every week right now. So,
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you for having me. You ask great questions, and you're so nice and friendly. So I appreciate your
oh, well, thank
all
you. Yeah, you too. Yeah, no, it's been a joy to talk to you. Absolutely. And I want to know about this script hookup that you have. How do you get all these scripts? Like, all right, cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye.